Hello and welcome to the Wonkette Weekend Live Chat. I'm Robin Panacchia, and this is the lovely and talented Stephen Robinson.
Hello, Robin. How are you?
Stephen, I'm swell. How are
Uh,
you?
I'm all right. So we've had a fun week. Can you kick us off a bit with the what's been going on in Martha's Vineyard with Ron DeSantis's human trafficking follies?
Oh yeah. Well, and they sent, all the people up to the vineyard to you're like, oh, look at all of the liberal hypocrites. Right now they've got Martha's Vineyard racists trending on Twitter because they want so badly to be like create this whole narrative, despite the fact that none of the things they're saying have actually happened and they're just misinterpreting everything. So that's been fun. Like,
Yeah. Well, and so you've written about this. Can you just bring folks who haven't
oh,
heard
okay. I
like
figured
what
everyone knew
exactly
already.
what he actually
So
has done and
basically,
why?
Ron DeSantis spent a bunch of taxpayer money, Florida taxpayer money, to send many immigrants from Texas to Martha's Vineyard, a very small island off the coast of Massachusetts, in order to, I guess, do some sort of turnabout is fair play. Oh, you wouldn't like the immigrants so much if they were in your backyard kind of thing, um, which really did not pan out well for them. And so now they're just pretending that it did.
Yeah, they're outright
The people
lying.
were very welcoming. They gave them food, they gave them a place to stay. And, there aren't resources on Martha's Island. Like, people there are not that many people who actually live there year round. There's only about 17,000 people who actually live on the vineyard. And, it's mostly, yes, it's a vacation spot for rich people. We did not ever actually go there. I've actually never been, despite having lived in Massachusetts. We went to Provincetown because it was way more fun. But
It is.
it's so much more fun. And so I don't have any of those Black Dog Bakery t-shirts anywhere, or any Lily Pulitzer dresses for that matter. But
I have vacation there as well. It is, but it's also very much like the movie Jaws, right? Where there are
well,
people who really need to. There are working class people who, when the
yeah,
rich come and frolic, that's like it's sort of tourism farming, right? Like this is a season you build up all the money, and if you don't, you're not going to make it for the winter. You'll starve.
yeah, pretty
And
much.
and there's this idea. I mean, it's overt lying that Republicans have been doing. And Ted Cruz originally was talking about the liberals summoned the National Guard. Of course, the governor of Massachusetts is a Republican, so instead of apologizing, Cruz just deleted the tweet because he's scum. And but the people, this idea of like I was seeing like some people from the Free Beacon and others talking about, oh boy, they've never seen brown people before, and Rich are trying to really sort of do this thing that they do, that conservatives want to imply that liberals are as awful as they are, which is sort of very
Yeah,
kind of literally a supervillain plot. It's like the end of the Dark Knight.
yeah. It's like,
And
we're going to prove that you're just as evil as we are. Um,
or
at
Missy's
heart.
plan at the end of season 8 of Doctor Who, which is just like
Yeah.
I need to prove that we are not so different. It's literally
Yeah.
classic supervillain type stuff.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
it's not like they're obsessed with like uh, Barack Obama's in Martha's Vineyard, and somehow it's just all these rich people and the one black
Well,
guy
because
who's
they
president.
actually, they're aware that people have certain feelings about rich people to some degree, and they're absolutely trying to capitalize on that because they really do want to be the, like, oh, we're the anti-rich people party, which clearly they're not. But they generally just want to be able to prove that liberals are hypocrites and what have you. The thing is, there aren't jobs for, like, They told the people they were going to Boston, which made sense. They agreed to go to Boston. There are a bajillion lawyers in Boston. So they had to have like lawyers come down to Martha's Vineyard in order to like help people because, everyone had already kind of left. There is not a lot of things to do there in the off season. And so, yes, they are looking to larger areas and, other resources to help people. They're actually trying to help people in a effective way. And Republicans really want to do that. Like, oh, they're just, lobbing it off on everyone else. They've deported the immigrants from Martha's Vineyard. I'm like, they're really, you want them all to live on Martha's Vineyard because there aren't jobs there.
Yeah. And I commented on this on Twitter earlier, was if, Democrats were grotesque enough, fortunately they are not, to just send busloads of poor, desperate, pregnant women to Amy Coney Barrett's house and say, okay, well, no, go take care of her. And then when she's like, well, I can't, like, I can't have all the, oh, wow, we've proven something. It's not only illogical, these are human beings. You're not like they sent some migrants, and they're still doing it today, to Kamala Harris's residence.
Yeah.
As if they're like pizzas, right? Like, you send a bunch of pizzas and it's like, oh, now you've got to pay for it. Waka waka. It's like, these are human beings.
Yeah, it's also, a horrible thing to do to people.
Murderers. But Carrie Lake said they're all murderers, right? So if there are all murderers and you're sending murderers to the vice president's house, isn't that essentially a terrorist act? Like, they're sort of, you can't really have it both ways. If these are very dangerous people, even as a goof, sending them deliberately to other people, it's kind of the trolley problem, right? Like, if you're, let's say, for the sake of argument, that you have good reasons for opposing immigration, particularly illegal immigration, from the trolley problem, philosophically, engaging in it and sending it to other people to prove a point is moral. You've engaged in it and made it worse. So now you are more morally culpable.
I mean, they don't actually believe that, those people are murderers. They just really like having someone that they can feel better than. It's really.
Oh, yes. Well, even if you don't think they're murderers, even if they're just an issue or a strain, whatever arguments you have against illegal immigration, you are not improving it by sending them like pizzas to people. So I don't know if folks saw Lauren Boebert, the dumbest woman in Congress until Herschel Walker joins. Hopefully that won't happen. She was sort of saying, don't call them migrants, which they're illegal.
Say they're illegals, the media.
Don't call them asylum seekers, which they legally are. That is an actual legal term. Call them illegals, which is, all right, well, it's sort of, she was sort of having a tantrum that the media was not enabling the dehumanization of these people. Like, it's very hard to depersonalize. You're not helping us depersonalize them. They're illegal aliens. It's like, well, they're not. If they were illegal aliens, we would all love them, because in media, Superman, E.T. are illegal aliens, literally so, and the public loves them. Like, every movie but actual illegal aliens. So why? But this idea, it's overtly an offensive concept. Like, other human beings in the 20
their
seconds,
existence is illegal. Is what she wants to get across. And it's like they're trying to do their own version of, when we call out other media sources for calling things racially charged.
I mean, illegal immigrants, you could call it, but they literally aren't illegal immigrants. They're asylum seekers. And she would not know this because
which is a very different thing.
Is dumb as a post. These are folks coming from communist countries, which Republicans should care about, that they're fleeing a communist regime, but they just don't care. They're just overtly terrible people. And this stunt, and the media has gone about whether it was a clever stunt or whatever. These are human beings. You're dealing with openly sadistic. What he did was monstrous. And something you and I have talked about, and it frustrates us. We've seen a lot of people particularly on the left, Democrats do this of like, well, Ron DeSantis isn't a real Christian because he's so terrible. And it's like, well, yes, he is. Stop with this. I'm just really sick of the no true Scotsman thing about Christians
And
because
I don't know why people think
this
this
what
is like
Christians
this
do.
great argument. Like, oh, that guy isn't really following the Christian religion. Yeah, he is, because the Christian religion is pretty much whatever people make it up to be. It's not, like it's
Well,
and what people have believed that crap for a bajillion years.
the history of Christianity is pretty awful. I'm not as hardcore Nietzsche as I was in my college days when I, had my copy of the Antichrist on the nightstand next to me. But still, it's a terrible kind of religion. And people will bring up like, oh, well, the black church. And I grew up in a black church and they will grow up. But ultimately, one thing that even Nietzsche and others have commented on is the whole concept is slave morality. So persecuted groups are meant to look at, oh, be meek, be mild. Jesus was tortured, and then look, he went up to heaven, and it'll be all right. And those are the ones who are actually following whatever the good side of it. Historically, the people in power are generally following the kind of crush your enemies form of Christianity. There's a lot more of the prosperity gospel. So people are kind of like, oh, well, how can these so-called Christians love Donald Trump? It's like, well, because it's all about prosperity and crushing your enemies. And he embraces that. So I'm just sort of done with this. Why, they
Yeah.
are Christians.
Like, hey, those people who did the Crusades, totally unchristian, totally,
Do you get like money back or something?
like
Is there a
name one
fine?
person, like literally name one person who would fit that mold. The only, there aren't that many people really, especially, quite frankly, white Christians are
Yeah.
especially not, like in particular, are,
Well, it's the dominant.
It's terrible. I like
dominant
Sister Helen
culture.
Prejean, and that is
If you are
possibly it.
if
No.
you are powerless, you're part of the Christianity that's nice and sweet. If you're the dominant culture, you're part of the Christianity that oppresses people and uses Christianity, religion as a blind. Here's my religious freedom. Here's all of this. It is arguably speaking, and I say this as an atheist, but when someone says, and I'm like, well, what's something good about this religion that we need that we're subject to? Well, what about loving your neighbor and loving people? And it's like, well, I mean, Jesus said to love people, so John Lennon said to love people, like loving and all that. There's the whole establishment of it. What happens
It wasn't terribly original.
Exactly, and everything about torturing queer people, torturing trans people, keeping black people enslaved, everything that was the worst of humanity, people,
They find the Bible verse for it.
Hid behind religion to justify it and to make themselves better about doing it. Because otherwise it's like, gee, why am I keeping these people enslaved? Oh, God says that they are inferior to me. What
God
can I do?
Cool with that. And I mean, they use the Bible to defend slavery right up until the end. They use it to defend Jim Crow. They use it to defend like every fucking atrocity on earth that has ever, not every single one, but a very large portion of them, which is, why I love it so much when people look at me with like, a little skepticism because I'm an atheist. They're like, not sure if I can trust you. Really?
You talked about
something.
You talked about white Christians, and I feel like this is something everyone dances around because it's true. Like, forget, if only white people voted, we would all live in a anti-democratic nightmare terror state, as opposed to that being a couple years down the line. But definitely right now, we would live in a fascist state if only white people voted. And if only white Christians voted, it would probably be even worse. Like it's Amy Coney Barrett, Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas time. And that's a reality. So when people are saying DeSantis is not a true, compared to whom? Like according, this is what Christians vote for. especially
Mhm.
white Christians, vote for. That's sort of the
They're
reality.
into it. I mean, they like the idea of, oh, hey, God totally punished that one lady for looking the wrong way. She's a pillar of salt now. But, the guy is great for offering up his daughters to be raped. What a wonderful human being. Like, that's what they're into. So I don't.
And I was following, because I've been following the governor's race in Georgia and the Senate race there, and it's always fascinating to me where they do the numbers, and it's like, okay, Abrams and Warnock can win if they just get 29% of white people to vote for them. And that's still presented as some sort of electoral Everest, that they've got to get 29% of white
In
Georgians
Georgia. So
to not vote for a a guy who barely knows what day it is, or an outright, someone like Kemp, who's clearly fascist flirting. He's not as overtly fascist as some others, but certainly willing to hang out with these guys. And when I commented recently on Twitter that, well, this just isn't sustainable. And I was somewhat lectured by someone saying, well, what do you mean? Like, why do we mean why do we need why should we why should we need 40 or 50% of white people? Are you saying that we need to modify our policies to appeal to whiteness? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that
just like statistically, that is what would need to happen.
And arguably a world where what we've seen going back to Obama is that America, the institutions and the structure is structured to benefit white people. White people and they don't kind of like it when they look around and like, why is this guy president? Why is this guy senator? We didn't put them there. So, it was close. The white vote was close for Clinton. He lost, but not by a lot. And when you started getting recently, like these folks were losing by, once you got to, even Romney, it's like 58% to 39%. And then it's like, well, this doesn't make sense. This isn't right. And I don't think you do get to violence and fascism. And I would love it to be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, well, a multicultural, diverse slate should overrule a white majority that's fascist, if enough of us. But those people are getting more and more fascist and violent in response. And Democrats aren't necessarily saying, when they say, oh, let's outvote them, they're not saying, oh, they're going to deny our victories and then try to kill us. They're just sort of still saying outvote us. And I was like, okay, well, no, we need to recognize that if the majority of white people in America are okay with fascism, that's not a quirk. That's going to be a long-term problem.
Yeah. No, that's something that needs a little bit more work than just, I don't know. Hey, be a good person. Like, what if you weren't terrible?
Have you? You wrote about Lauren today. I read your piece about Lauren Boebert thinking the end times were coming.
Well, I think honestly, they just came out with that study a hot minute ago. I'm getting some feedback and hearing my own voice, and so I'm getting a little thrown off. But do you have your laptop on?
Mine?
Yeah. Because I'm just like hearing echoes. Are you hearing echoes?
No, I'm not. So it must be.
Oh, okay.
Are you on somewhere?
That is just very weird. So there was a study that came out about this week that was that said that there are fewer Christians in the United States than ever. So these people are big. I think a lot of the reason why the Christian nationalism is being pushed so hard, oh, thank God it's gone, by these people is that they can feel everything slipping away from them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really, what it comes down to for a lot of things. I also wrote this week about, Tucker Carlson and is like, oh no, there's no masculinity anymore, crying Jag.
Poor fellow.
Like, oh God, because the vaccine mandates were a plot to make high testosterone men jobless, because we're going around measuring that kind of thing. And it's all these different things, and the moral of each of these stories is Christians feel like they're losing power, men feel like they're losing power, white people feel like they're losing power, and they're not feeling like they are as dominant as they are supposed to be, and so they're going batshit crazy and doing pretty much anything they can to try and regain some of what was really like.
Yeah, and it's true. And I find that it's been sort of a liberal challenge of where you explain this and just like they will resist what the end result is. Like, ultimately, it's sort of being conflict averse, right? So it's like eventually this is going to be ugly, or we need to acknowledge it's not like a very special episode of a show and we all hug it out. It's like they
Yeah.
are not our existence. They're not going to tolerate. There's
Yeah,
no.
they're not okay with the way things are.
And often I was told, a friend, she was like, well, the world's not a zero sum game. So we can have this wonderful liberal progressive utopia, and we just need to explain to white people that everything's going to be great. And it's like, well, no, because if you had slaves, you probably enjoyed having slaves. And if you were Tucker Carlson, and if you're any sort of mediocre white guy, you enjoyed where being a mediocre white guy was enough.
Yeah.
It wasn't
When that's
great
all you had to be.
to there. I would love, there, even in a socialist utopia, there's only you and I have jobs that mediocre white guys believe they were entitled to, and they had, and they were like, 20 years ago, we would have had these jobs. We would have had these opportunities. And they feel like, as you said, it's all slipping away. And I think Trump was speaking to that and others were speaking to that. And there was no kind of, you sort of like, there's no way to make them happy. And I think
here's
that's
the thing.
problem.
We have, like you said, this has been a society designed by white people largely to benefit white people, and it has been a society designed by men largely to benefit men and to play into their, perceived strengths.
Mm-hmm.
We're supposed to, be like, yay, aggression, boo, cooperation, and, those sort of ideals. We're supposed to be valorizing what they consider masculinity to be. And they feel that and we're supposed to be saying that we live in a Christian country, and we're supposed to have, white mermaids. Whiteness is supposed to be the norm. It's supposed to be the default option. And they're feeling now like they're starting to live in despite the fact that they are not, living in a society where, that is not as built for them and for their personal strengths and, what have you, as much as for other people's that they think they are better than. And so now they keep, if you notice, they keep searching for people that they can be better than.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really, until Trump, you didn't really hear people, you did hear people yelling about immigrants, but there have been a big chunk of years there where people didn't really give too much of a shit about that. And then he came in and they were like, oh my God, we got these people, we can be better than these people. That's amazing. And they're like, oh my God, we can be better than transgender people. And they're just, scraping the bottom of the barrel, searching for people that they can feel superior to, because that's the only way that they can feel good about themselves.
Yeah. And that was some of that in Virginia, where there's this whole with the school saying that no, essentially trans kids would have to be dead named unless they got parental approval. And it's one of those things that people will think like, what's wrong with parental rights? What's wrong with that? Or what's doing and what?
Because these kids could get hurt by their parents
Oh,
or
yes.
kicked out of their homes.
Well, and that was kind of the point there, was that traditionally, schools were never supposed to be just sort of, hey, look, the kid comes to class with a black eye. Hey, that's whatever the parents say is fine. No, they intervened. There was an
Yeah.
idea of there is a moral standing that schools have that can trump how parents might wish to treat their kids. That's always been the case.
Mhm.
And then suddenly, when it came to gender identity or sexuality, then it became a case of, oh, parental rights. You are not letting me raise my kids the way I want to. I want to raise them as racist. I want to ignore their gender identity, and you are denying that to me. And yes, it's all about allowing for the abuse of anyone who is different. And it is what can you do with a group of people who are essentially very sadistic and resent anyone who's different. I guess Gavin Newsom wants to debate them. Didn't he ask?
I don't know that debating ever really accomplishes anything.
No.
There's a reason why scientists stopped debating creationists.
Exactly. Well,
Like,
years ago, I think you wrote about when was it Ben Shapiro challenged um uh, Alexandra
yes, Dave.
Ocasio-Cortez to a debate, and he said, "I will pay you whatever $10,000 to talk to me." It was just something. It was like Pretty Woman or something, but for and you know, and can you speak to this? Because you had said that in your experience, there's a lot of guys like that who just really want to own you or not, like had debate you
Yeah.
or something very
Well,
important.
this is the thing. If I will tell you, I don't know how many requests you get. No, I don't get it as much as I used to when I wrote for a site that was sort of more like everyone did not have my exact same political views, I guess. It was like a little bit more neutral in certain ways. I don't get it as much as I used to, but I used to get like crazy, crazy letters from men being like, I demand that you debate me. I'll still get it on Twitter sometimes. And I'm like, I have no idea who you are. I don't owe you a conversation.
Mhm.
And, men in general get very upset if they're like, oh, this woman doesn't owe me anything. I'm weirdly angry and going to be creepy about that. But, well, I have also met men before who have like heard about, like, will know me through other people. My sister, friends, whoever, they're like, oh, I've been wanting to meet you because I wanted to debate you. And I'm like, I have no interest in doing that. Please do not ever try to make me do that. That is boring for me. Also, please don't try to talk to me about crystals.
Well, because someone like Ben Shapiro is not interested in your views, so
No, they just want to
I'm
be able to like
make
assert their
fun of you and
dominance,
assert your dominance. Now, I'm someone who
and they
enjoys
want attention.
exactly, and I enjoy talking to people of different point of views and coming from a perspective of you know, uh, mutual respect. That's not what's happening, right? So the idea of like,
Mhm.
you might have this opinion, I might have this opinion, and it's like, okay, well, oh, and I never thought about this before. You're never going to hear that from Shapiro, right? He's not going to be like,
Yeah,
oh, I didn't hear this before. Oh, here's where I'm coming from. And I get that because a certain part of liberalism wants to believe like that's what college is
yeah.
about
You
or
try
thinking
that, and then
about.
you find out that the person is a Holocaust denier, which is
Well,
has
yes, that was
actually happened to me. So,
Well, that was as you were saying about not debating creationists, because there was this period where right wingers believed that the point of college, the point of spending $30,000 a year to send your kid, is to send them someplace where they are going to be exposed to every wackadoodle idea possible, but there's no streamlining. There's no kind of like, who knows what the law
well, I
is
don't
at
think, yeah,
Georgetown. Let's just invite some random disbarred lawyer to talk his opinion and have no, it makes no sense.
see, it was actually, I believe it was way more pointed than that because it wasn't every idea. They're very angry at a lot of the ideas that are being taught in colleges. What they wanted, though, is that it had more to do with normalization. which is also what the debates essentially are about. They want this crazy idea is, just as, it's on the same level as the normal idea because they're being debated by people. They're
Exactly.
being
Who
they're being
knows?
given equal consideration. So yes, they wanted people like Charles, what's his face, the bell curve guy. They wanted him on college campuses. They wanted Milo on college campuses, giving speeches. They wanted, actual Richard Spencer, literal Nazis on college campuses, because what that did was normalize it.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted Charles Murray. Thank you. They wanted these people to be, like, these ideas are just as reasonable as the ideas that are being presented on campuses otherwise. It would be like you wouldn't have generally on a college campus someone come in and talk about flat earth, at least not, say 10 years ago, before it started being more of a common thing where people believe in that. You wouldn't have, because the idea is so ridiculous. And, at a certain, the idea of having Charles Murray at a college was so ridiculous and offensive. And they wanted it to be, Oxford, they wanted they wanted it to be normalized.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to the debate arguments of, especially debating your right to, once I'm having you debate your right to exist, I've already won.
Yeah,
And because
because you put it into question.
your rights are now up for debate. Because no one is debating whether Ben Shapiro should exist as someone who is a shrimpy little creep who can't satisfy his wife. That's not up for debate, but he will debate trans people and bully trans people, and that's it's apparently supposed to be. But all they want to do, like Matt Walsh, you're not going to expose him. That's the liberal argument. You expose him, you reveal he's a fool, and everyone walks away. But that's like a fantasy. That's like old
And
TV
slow
movies
claps.
or whatever. Yeah, like
Yeah.
everyone stops listening to the bully, and then it all ends, and that would be lovely, but that doesn't happen. So, to your earlier point, if DeSantis debates Newsom, all that happens is DeSantis will hit the normal talking points. He'll insult him, he'll lie, and then right-wing media will say he triumphed and owned.
Yeah,
And you
no
wonder
matter
about
what the results, they'll be like, totally owned, blah, 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 in all caps in the YouTube videos.
And nothing is achieved by this. And I got in trouble. I wrote for Wonkette a while back about how I think political debates are a waste of time now, because and everyone's like, oh, well, we're supposed to have a free share of ideas and whatever. That just doesn't happen. All that happens is screaming and yelling. The moderator doesn't pay any attention or do anything, and
Yeah,
it doesn't work. And it's a weird world where liberals will then show me in response, what about this epic moment when you're no Jack Kennedy moment? And it's like, well, who won that election in 1988? So okay, that was a great dunk that
yeah.
was never Vice President Lloyd Benson made on actual Vice President Dan Quayle, but it did not change the race. I mean, even the debate between Biden and Sarah Palin was not. She performed fine, because again, they lowered the expectations because she was going against Biden. It was really sort of the the Katie Couric interview is considered the one that made her look particularly ridiculous. Now we're in a world where Herschel Walker has had multiple Katie Couric interview moments, and it's not changed anything. He's
Well,
still,
because people have become inured to it.
yeah. So what do you possibly imagine would happen? I guess there might be some agreement on a Herschel Walker, Raphael Warnock debate. I mean, how do you
I
think
don't
it's going to
think.
play out?
I don't think the debate is the best way to discuss any issue or deal with any problem. or like at all. I think it is a terrible way of doing that. I don't think that it would necessarily be productive for Warnock to do that. I think it'd be more productive for him to have a town hall. Like, he doesn't need to be, there is no need for him to be on the same stage or even like acknowledging Walker, I don't think.
And to Michael's point there, even in boxing matches, there are rules. So if you're in the ring with another boxer, you just grab like a chair and hit the boxer, you lose. Like, okay, well, so during the Trump debate, he multiple times pulled the chair out, right? Like, he violated multiple rules and it didn't matter. So wasn't like someone's like, okay, debate over, you now lose. It's just the moderator just kind of like meekly like, okay, well, maybe don't do this, don't do that, which is what will happen. Like, Herschel Walker will probably assert dominance, which helps with his base, talk over Warnock, insult him, lie. And so, as you were saying, town halls are much better. These face,
and also no one calls them, no one says like that is explicitly a lie. So it doesn't, like, what does it even matter?
Yeah, he's
if they're like allowed to go up there and lie, like that should be against one of the rules.
Yeah, like, okay, this is over. This is no longer, you've lost. You took the chair out, or you're cheating. Otherwise, it's like, no, it's just a farce. So, so last night, Donald Trump had probably his most fascist rally of his.
Oh, that's a tough one. I was gonna try to find the creepy music from the end of it, so I could play it while we were talking today. Figure out what it was.
I don't know. Yeah, it just keeps escalating, and America is in the sense of, we have to. I don't know. Okay, the worse it gets, America feels more determined to normalize it, because the worse it gets means acknowledging how bad it is. So
Exactly.
clearly, Trump is is a criminal head of a fascist movement. And when I asked the average Democrat about it, and yes, Biden gave his semi-fascist speech, but generally the argument is like
the lighting. That was apparently the lighting.
Engaging with them as if it's a normal political party, as you would say. Like, it's just, okay, well, yes, this other party is now officially full on Nazis. But what is your healthcare plan, Democrats? How are you going to deal with inflation? And that, essentially, we've already lost when that happens, because when in a two-party system, one party sometimes gains total power, that's how the structure is. So this argument that whenever I raise issues about, well, these Republicans said they won't acknowledge election results. These Republicans, like Ron DeSantis, is clearly a psychopath. So when Biden sends without hesitation, okay, there's no water, there's no drinking water in Mississippi. Of course, you have federal help. There's been, I don't care that no one voted for me in Kentucky except a guy named Stan. I'm gonna send help when there's tornadoes or floods. That's just sort of the given. DeSantis is a psychopath, and Trump, more so. Trump did this, but DeSantis will probably.
He specifically wanted to punish states that did not vote for him.
Yes, so we can presume that when a hurricane or a wildfire hits a quote unquote blue state, he will not help. And when you raise that, it's like, oh, all the more reason to vote blue no matter who. And it's like, okay, well, winning every time against the fascist party that also won't acknowledge when you win does not seem to be the answer. Like, you need to somehow eliminate the fascist party, because eventually, if you treat them as a normal political party, they will gain power, and then that's it. That
And they
they won't
already have
relinquish
a
it.
lot of power. Like there's no question of that. And it is entirely possible that they will have more in just a few months. Um, they are the opposition party right now, and it is very, it is difficult to like not I'm not saying not normalize them, but it's not like you can't really debate those kinds of points like, oh, I believe that Tom Hanks is eating babies, and that's my personal issue. You can't. What are you going to do with that? You can't like. There's nowhere you can go. They make everything up as they go along. So,
Well, can you imagine? I mean, the 2020 debates were absurd enough, but the 2024 debate, if Trump is the nominee, like, what is that like? Well, I won the election, and Biden's like, I disagree, and here's all this that like it's just he's existing in a fantasy world, and no one the media is not because, oh, well, if we acknowledge truth, then we are apparently siding with Democrats. So
mhm.
we've got to like occasionally,
Be like, maybe truth isn't real.
because then maybe
Maybe the
Republicans
earth
will come
is
on our
flat.
show.
You don't know. Both sides.
So CNN's gotten worse, and they fired people who were saying like,
Oh, they're going right off the rails. Like they're like, we would like to be more like Fox. That's our plan.
but what does it even mean to be more like Fox? Are you trying to be like overtly a pro Republican party? Because I've written we kind of need a liberal version of Fox when
No, no,
there's
no. They want to be
exists.
like, um, they do want to be Republican, basically,
Mhm.
because they're like, that's who watches cable news, which is, I mean, I don't really watch cable news, so I guess that's fair, but
No,
if
I mean that's a certain
we're trying to make money. Yeah, they want, but
that's a
what
reasonable
kind of
business
annoys me
argument.
though is that CNN, like, why are we pretending that CNN was like so fabulously liberal to begin with? Because they really were not. Like, um,
No,
they
there was
brought
no
us
liberal. There's never
Glenn
been a
Beck
liberal
and Lou
network.
Dobbs, and
I mean, MSNBC had
um,
Joe Scarborough during the morning, so it was
mhm.
there's never been a liberal Fox News. Democrats have never had a rapid response network that kind of spun everything they did in a positive sense. And when one party has a propaganda outlet, and I know um, it was great for Stephen Colbert's career to satirize how Fox was, all up George W. Bush's ass and selling his war and everything. But, once the laughs are over, the reality is that there's a lot of damage that happens when only one party has a propaganda outlet.
Yeah,
And, I don't want to be part of a propaganda outlet when, I don't enjoy when someone will say, look, we're so close to election, don't criticize Democrats. And no, it's like, I don't, that's not what I signed up for.
yeah,
It's sort of fascism by any other name. So to me, my version of liberal Fox News is just sort of as aggressively arguing the truth. I'm not lying. I'm just aggressively pointing out here's the flaws, here's what they're
yeah.
doing, here's why they're lying, and here's why everything they're saying is BS. And doing everything you can to sort of tank people like Margie Taylor Greene instead of because if you don't, all that happens is SNL and Trevor Noah. She's just you just sort of make these figures comedy figures, which
Hmm.
to me is, to your point, normalizes them. It's like no matter, yeah, all those Alec Baldwin sketches, all this sort of stuff. It wasn't like, oh man, everyone's laughing at Trump and he's ruined as a political figure. No, all it didn't
I think that
do
people,
anything.
because I do think that it did work to some degree for uh, Ford and Bush,
Mhm.
Bush the first, in terms of like Saturday Night Live kind of at that point like screwing with their public images, but that was
Mhm.
also at a time when um there wasn't the 24-hour cable news. People weren't paying as much attention to what the president was doing all the time. So, those images got lodged in people's heads as the images of those presidents. I still will always picture Gerald Ford as Chevy Chase, and I only ever watched reruns. So I cannot picture actual Gerald Ford in my head, and they looked nothing alike. So I don't.
It's interesting. I think the first time he appears, and I think maybe a couple of times they make a point of saying this isn't the president. There were still a sense of trying to be respectful to the office, and I don't think they ever directly called him Ford. They just called him the president. I think towards the end, because there was a debate, which is one of the last. It's a debate between and you should look it up online if folks have not seen it. It's hilarious. It's between Ford and Jimmy Carter, as played by Dan Aykroyd, and Jimmy Carter talks someone off an acid hot trip. It's just really
I have not seen that, but I will look into it.
You should. It's the Karen Black episode, so just look for Sounding Like
Karen Black.
She's also beautiful. But yes, I think now
I actually did in one of my articles, I think on the CNN issue, because Fox is no longer crazy enough for the vast majority of conservative viewers. Fox isn't giving them what they need. In fact, on these the forums that I spent way too much time looking at, they all consider Fox to be controlled opposition and what have you. They think it's, just, trying to represent them, but it really doesn't. They're secret liberals, except for Tucker Carlson, who is, still, king of everything. So I think that CNN's plan is to be slightly more centrist than Fox. And, there isn't really an audience for that. I know how badly people I feel like people want so badly to believe that there is this incredible market for centrism, which, by the way, fascism is a centrist philosophy, or political philosophy. Actual fascism, not rhetorical fascism.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, they're evil, but they're not dull. So interests are just sort of, okay, well, you're not evil, but you're incredibly dull. Why am I listening? I fall asleep. I mean, that's been a problem with Democratic leadership. With folks will, I'd written recently about AOC's, and just by acknowledging existence, there's usually some centrist backlash. When she had defended the witness at a hearing, where this guy was just being a complete jerk to her, and someone, of course, had responded "Oh, she had to make it about her." Okay, fine. But there's the backlash folks will have of "Oh, well, here's all these very good and well-behaved Democratic women, especially Democratic women of color, and they should get attention." And it's sort of this kind of Meghan Markle, Kate Middleton type thing, because it's kind of, well, what you like the fact that they don't get attention because they're dull as mayonnaise. That's what you want. And so as soon as they are not dull as mayonnaise enough to get attention, they would then
because that's part of the value. Because it's the I feel like this is sort of more of a societal thing, where it's almost in the same vein as men saying they like women who don't wear makeup. It's this sort of, no, it's this sort of valorization of women who don't take up too much space and know where their place is. They're not bothering anyone. They're not, scaring people. They're not too loud. They're not there are a lot of rules about what it is to be a woman in the public's in public as a human person.
Absolutely. And
men don't actually
actually like that. Yeah. And Lauren Underwood comes up a lot, and some of Sheriff Davids as the appropriate kind of that centrist And if you look at their Twitter feed, you can see where Democratic leadership, fossilized leadership, has sort of steered them towards. Their feed reads like a constant everything's fine meme, right? So
Yeah.
despite a literal fascist uprising, it will be, we just signed our bipartisan, here's our legislation. And centrists love this. They talk about, well, look at all this legislation this person's passed and this person didn't pass legislation. I'm still waiting on that legislation. That, even if it's like naming a post office or something. And it's disconnected from the world that we actually exist, where there is like, you should be angry. like especially a woman of color, like, you should be angry that you've lost your right to
Yeah.
bodily autonomy. Various right, more so that here I've worked with some Republicans to get this bill passed is less compelling. And then to your point about, it's Eric Swalwell who's mixing it up, right? His Twitter feed is about him. He's like calling out Carrie, Ruben Gallego did the same thing. He's calling out Carrie Lake, he's calling out fascists, getting in the mix. And so, of course, when it's time to run for a larger office, those are the guys who are going to get some attention.
Yeah.
And these candidates won't. And then everyone's going to say it's like sexist or racist. It's like, well, no, because during a literal fascist uprising, this person sort of hid under their desk and just said,
But also, let's be real, it's more palatable to people when it comes from a man.
Absolutely.
It really is. Like, it's, if it's a woman, it's like, especially like, let's be real, if it's a very attractive woman, like AOC, there is a certain anger that people have there, especially, towards women who are a certain kind of pretty. Let's be she's not like a Fox anchor, television anchor pretty. She's like stunning. And there's a societal anger there. There's also just a general, people are more comfortable just in life. It's like, we are socialized to accept men, boys will be boys, in school, boys are, there's a whole like reviving Ophelia thing when I was a teenager. I'm dating myself, but we're socialized to accept men being, taking up space and taking up attention, and raised to be socialized to be extremely suspicious of women who attract attention. You can even see this like in, you and I discussed it in movies where the Betty Davis movie Jezebel, and also Gone with the Wind, where both of these, Jezebel was her condolence prize after not getting Scarlett O'Hara. Both of them get in trouble for wearing red dresses. And that is like, oh my God, how can you do something so evil? You wore a red dress to a party. And so long story short, Betty Davis's punishment for that was having to go to Yellow Fever Island. But there's this deep, deep, deep anger towards women who attract attention to themselves, as opposed to the good woman who is humble and doesn't look like she's wearing a lot of makeup and doesn't talk out of turn. I actually hate to bring up Gone with the Wind again, but it's the Scarlett O'Hara is bad, Melanie is good. They're both fine with slavery, basically, but Melanie's a lot more demure about it, or everything. And that's how we decide like what kind of woman is good, what kind of woman is bad. Whenever women in media are criticized, there's always people who are like, oh, she draws attention to herself, she just wants attention. And it's the worst, most evil, like underhanded, cruel thing you can do as a woman. It is and it's ridiculous.
Meghan Markle was smirking. Apparently, like someone found a shot of her at the Queen's. I don't know the actual funerals occurred. It's like one of the stages of, it's like a Greek Orthodox wedding over there. So it's like taking.
Yeah, I have no idea what's happening.
But
I know one guy was flashing people.
We catch a photo of her and she's smirking or whatever. So, but yes, it's like any anything you do. And a lot of the Meghan Markle hate does remind me of with AOC and with other, because it's just anything she does, they leap upon. So
Yeah.
it's sort of
And
trying
so
to
then
find
there's resentment
ways
over
to-
that. It's like, why isn't, the other one getting attention for being boring? Like,
yes, you just don't. You're not going to get attention for being boring and for like trying to avoid. You need to it. You need to sort of be out there, willing to take a punch if you're going to be a
mhm.
leader, and it can't just be AOC taking the punches. So okay, fine, you don't like her politics, but all right, centrists, be willing to at least come out there and take a punch. And I think, and again, you're right.
But the whole thing is that
Swalwell gets to do this as a man, but he is someone who's not overtly liberal, but he's willing to at
boys
least
get called
take
on
a
in
punch.
class more. It's
He's able to go out there and take a punch and mix it up with these guys. And so you've got to like do that. Otherwise, there's this vacuum. Otherwise, you're just sort of, look at me. I'm passing bipartisan legislation with, this party. They're normal Republicans. They're out there. They want to do a good job. And it's like, that's not what's happening right now. So.
sorry, I just really enjoyed that. Seriously, like there is nothing right that you can do that she can do with her face. There's almost no correct way to sound as a woman. All of our voices are grating, as we learned during debates, which is again why I hate debates. No, it's not why I hate debates, but there's almost there's no good way to be a woman that isn't like annoying some people, especially if you are taking up some kind of space that could otherwise go to a man.
Yes, I think someone a while back or whatever had commented that you speak louder than I do, and I was kind of rolling my eyes on that because, well, one, I'm of a family of famous low talkers. My father and myself, and you are not, but that's fine. It is like I don't think that makes this unlistenable. Please tell us if that's the case. I will try to shout. It was very tough for me during the mask period because being a low talker and having the mask.
Oh God, yeah, the talkers were tough.
I was having to like I felt like I was screaming all the time and still getting soy oat lattes because people were misunderstanding me, and it was just like that's why I just
that sounds gross.
Yeah, I just wasn't like, why would I order this? This is not. I guess you misunderstood me, but why would anyone want this? So perhaps switching gears slightly, because I think people do enjoy when we somewhat talk about some pop cultural stuff. Is there anything that's of interest to you in the world of either Broadway or Phantom's ending? Right?
Yes, Phantom is closing after 35 years. It is not one of my favorites. In fact, I don't like Phantom. I hate Phantom. It's terrible. It's like I don't know. Although Starlight Express exists, so it's not the worst Andrew Lloyd Webber, but
yeah.
So Starlight Express, Cats, and Phantom are all pretty terrible. Are you a Phantom person?
No.
I didn't think so.
It was part of the spectacle. There was a period of about the spectacle, in a way of theater trying to compete with movies. And so here's.
I took them a seat at the chandelier falling. I admit that.
And to date myself, you've paid a whole $50 for that ticket, so we're gonna give you some spectacle now. Like that, God help you to get $50. Now it's just ridiculously expensive, but I do. I mean, when I saw our field trip, we saw Cats, and that was a shocker. Of the ticket was $50, but it was like, okay, here's a stretch. Now there's like just ridiculous. I think it started around about 20 or so years ago. You started getting things about with the producers like about 100, 200.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's like out of nowhere costs. So, but these things happen. 35 years is a good run. It's probably national tours and whatever. Good for.
Yeah. Oh, they're gonna be national tours forever. It's gonna be like Les Mis, which I have seen 46,000 times, I will admit.
So you
Curiously,
enjoy Les Mis.
I know. Yeah, I really do.
There's nothing wrong with enjoying
Yeah.
it. Very, but not the movie, right?
Obviously not. I'm not a monster. I have never seen the movie. I never will see the movie.
Oh God.
Why? No, you can't have a Javert that can't sing. Like, that's so wrong. Javert is the best, like, one of my all-time favorite male roles in the theater. Because I love a baritone.
I was hoping that
So
they'd get
much.
Marnie Nixon to dub his voice.
They should have, like, honestly, I am totally in favor of dubbing in Hollywood musicals. I'm not even kidding. Because again, musicals, you just want to hear them sing, like they're there to sing. And I don't, know why that is so difficult for people to really understand. It's like no one wants to hear like realistic singing of people
No.
who can't sing that well. Like that's not especially not in Les Mis, where there aren't like spoken words. But sorry. Hold on. It's not true. It's just there are a lot of very handsome Javerts. Okay.
Yeah, I don't get.
But
What
there
was
is
happening
gonna.
with
Are you a Les Mis person?
I'm just not.
Yeah.
It's very interesting but one would. It's just not my thing. I sort of
Yeah.
those. I mean,
What is your cheesy music, like super cheesy mainstream musical that you actually like?
That's hard to judge. I mean, what I would say would be cheesy. Like tends to be like incredibly gay, right? Like so, Mamma Mia, I adore.
Oh yeah, no, that counts as like like a mainstream, been on Broadway forever kind of type. For the masses.
I was 13. My first Broadway musical was Cats, 1987. So I have a soft spot for Cats, and even though it's insane, but so I
think it might have been Phantom. I'm not sure. I actually do think it might have been Phantom. Because my parents didn't really get my whole musical theater thing so much. It was either that or The Secret Garden, which we went to because that was one we thought Gia could tolerate. My sister does not like musicals.
Behind me is the Grey Gardens, which I saw and loved. I'm a big fan of the movie and of course and then the musical. And one of our first dates, my wife and I went to see it, and I think she'd not seen the movie at that point. And we're in the theater, we're waiting to be let in. My wife kind of looks around and she leans into me and it's like, "Why are all these men dressed like this?" They were dressed like a lot of people dressed like Little Edie, and it's like, what is going on? Not that she wasn't offended by it. It was just sort of, it's like she had no idea what this was about. So we're just gonna go. It's like, no, it's gonna be awesome. And she loved it.
Yeah, I mean, we actually discussed Grey Gardens before the show started because I was planning during our discussion of Martha's Vineyard to talk like Little Edie the whole time and not mention it.
It is
this
sort
is
of
the best costume for today.
That's wonderful. It's like a crazy Jackie Kennedy, right? Because they're cousins.
Well, they're cousins.
Yes, and it's just sort
of. They actually sound a lot like my Nana sounded, so I can. Although, yes.
Michael liked Grease. I just want to say, when I was working front of house at theaters in the mid 90s, when I first moved to New York, I was assigned to Grease for a while, which I called my Grease hell period, because at other theaters, if you sell like programs and concessions.
Okay, but was that when Megan Mullally was playing Marty?
I am not sure. I think it was Xena. It was a Xena period.
Oh, that was way after, yeah.
So this is like 97, I think. And
okay.
I started at Victoria. Victoria closed, and I got assigned. A friend got me a job at Greece before I hopped over to Chicago. And Chicago saved my life because Greece. So just to clarify for everyone, so at most theaters, you can lock up the concession stand, and then you you sell at the beginning of the show, you sell at intermission, and you sell at the end. But otherwise, you can then leave. You don't have to actually watch the
Yeah.
show if you don't want to. But Chicago or Victoria, I did. I watched it a lot. But Grease, I kind of didn't want to watch. I saw the first one. I was like, okay, I'm
I mean, I feel like I have Grease very much memorized.
But you could not lock the stands. My first day, you sort of realize in horror, it's like a horror movie. You could not lock the stands. And someone's like, oh, you've got to stay here by the stands for the entire show. So I had to watch the show 8 times a week. And
that could get tiring. Although I like the stage show, I think better than the musical, even though, yes, Michael is correct. John Travolta is very dreamy in it, and it's probably sort of weirdly imprinted on my brain as like male attractiveness standards. I like the stage musical so much better because it has like way better songs. It has Freddie My Love. It has It's Raining on Prom Night, and I'm very, it would be better if they had included those in the show rather than what they ended up doing, because it was actually way more of an ensemble piece for the show itself. But what I will say is, as I have mentioned several times in articles, I indeed prefer Grease 2.
Electric Boogaloo, yes.
Yes.
I am a big Stockard Channing fan, so the first Grease will always be near and dear to my heart. But
I think Stockard Channing was one of the first things you and I bonded on.
Oh yeah, she's awesome. It's just wonderful, and I am always impressed by how she learned 6 Degrees of Separation and about like
that was because we were talking about 6 Degrees of Separation. I was like, I love Stockard Channing, and you were like, I too love Stockard Channing, and then we were friends.
Yeah, exactly. Over theater, because it's a magical thing. I will say, for anyone who watched our bonus chat yesterday, and they're gonna do some others with Michael, who writes for us at One Act. He does the Sunday show piece that airs on Mondays. He would have made a very good Danny Zuko. He's got that vibe.
Like the greaser, I can see that.
I just never really had the greaser. I guess maybe the guy who
I love the greaser. I spent a lot of time on the Rockabilly retirement plan. So I still have bangs. They're just not very short. But yeah, I'm weird sucker for that look. It's embarrassing.
What was it? Vinny?
Wait, what?
Oh yeah.
Can you give me 1 second? I'm gonna go and grab. I'm not gonna get the Nicolas Cage pillow, but I am gonna grab something really quickly. I'll be back. Stephen can talk to you.
Well, the idea of a Vinnie Barbarino pillow is awesome. Oh wait, we have an announcement. Next Saturday's Wonkette movie night is The Addams Family, 1991, which is a classic. I'm a big fan of that film. It is, I think we've discussed this. It's one of those films that everyone assumes Tim Burton directed, and he did not. And if I am a movie geek, I will say it's obvious he did not direct the film, but he did not. Please show us, Robin, again.
It's a Welcome Back, Kotter lunchbox.
That's awesome.
It's very exciting. You're all really thrilled by it.
Yes, I guess.
I actually took that to school. It was vintage at the time. I had it as a purse.
You couldn't be tempted to sing us a little of the theme song for Welcome Back, Kotter.
I thought you were a mermaid.
I'm kidding. Or
things all changed since you've been around. I don't know. Who'd have thought they'd lead you back here where we need you? I don't know. Oh, well, we tease them a lot because we got them on the spot. Welcome back. Sorry, I don't really know that.
You are such a lovely voice. It is very. I am always constantly surprised by how good it is.
That's so nice. I sound like shit right now.
But it's very theatrical. You would also I don't know, my favorite TV theme song of all time, which would not surprise you, is The Nanny. is just one of my
She
favorites.
was working at a bridal shop in Flushing, Queens. Still the bartender having one of those crushing scenes. What was she to do? Where was she to go? She was out on her fanny. So over the bridge from Flushing to the Sheffield store, she was there to sell makeup, but the father saw more. She had style, she had flair. She was there. That's how she became the nanny. Yeah, that one I got.
It's
Fran
just it is
Drescher,
perfect.
Fran Drescher was absolutely one of my childhood style icons. So
For good reason. Fran Drescher is amazing.
yeah,
I think I think she's more than sort of the people like to say it's a jokey voice, but I think she's a great comic
she's
actress. Yeah.
a wonderful actress and awesome person. She's actually like super radical. Politically, I love her, and she's freaking stunning. Like somehow, like everyone like completely missed that she like. I will say, when I was younger, my whole plan was to grow up and look exactly like she did in the Spinal Tap movie. Like that was,
No, no, no.
my whole
I
plan for myself, but I
I
can't pull
got
my
that.
hair back.
I got that Fran Drescher was attractive. I was lured while watching The Nanny when I should be outside when other people were out partying or whatever. I So since I guess we're close to time, is there anything
Oh,
else?
I forgot to say the whole reason we were talking about Phantom, other than the fact that it closed, is the fact that they are doing a weird mini series on Peacock that is coming out soon. That's going to be like it's a murder mystery where the backdrop is Andrew Lloyd Webber's Phantom, and it sounds weird, and I will probably watch it, even though, again, hate Phantom.
It's a wonderful backdrop because it's what people think musicals are, right?
Yeah,
So, like I remember Caroline in a City, one of the characters was like on Cats or something. And so that was what people would think this struggling
yeah,
performer would do. Although that would have been a great gig.
yeah. That would have been. That was like yeah, that's like a win.
She probably the person even Ensemble and Cats probably would not have been needing to ask the lady who did one comic strip a week for money, because generally speaking, that probably was more lucrative, especially in the mid 90s when newspapers
Yeah.
were dying. But yes, thank you. This week, we've got more radicals trying to take away birth control access. That's one thing we've got going on that I'm looking into, and I don't know what else. There's a rising fascist movement. Hopefully, there'll be something pleasant to discuss. So,
yeah, and I might write something really super fascinating about the Fifth Circuit Court's decision on some tech matters that are actually really bad. Like it's really gonna fuck the First Amendment. And Section 230, yay!
thank you. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for everyone for joining us. Send us out, Robin.
With what?
Just send us out.
Oh, we're leaving. I'll see you later. I was like, do you want me to sing again?
No.
See you guys later.
Take care.